My manager wore a smug expression as he pushed a dismissal notice toward me across the conference table, and this happened precisely one day before a $4 million performance payout was scheduled to reach my account. Every person in that room anticipated a breakdown, a heated argument, or desperate pleading. What they witnessed instead was me calmly reviewing every page, signing where required, and exiting the building without a single word. 60 minutes later, the company's senior legal counsel slowly set down her glasses, locked eyes with the chief executive, and delivered a question that drained the colour from every face present. "Brian, please tell me you paid her." The silence that followed told the whole story, because every person sitting in that room had just come to terms with the fact that they had committed the most financially devastating error of their professional lives. My name is Olivia, and I had devoted nearly 12 years to helping construct one of the most rapidly expanding technology companies in the nation. When I first walked through those doors, we operated out of a cramped workspace filled with aging equipment and a team of fewer than 20 people. Throughout the years that followed, I surrendered weekends, skipped vacations, and traded sleep for progress in order to watch that organisation transform into a billion-dollar enterprise. Significant projects consistently found their way to my desk, and whenever leadership gathered to celebrate another record-shattering fiscal year, my dedication received public recognition. What gradually became clear to me was that corporate loyalty tends to evaporate the moment someone in power decides that keeping you around costs too much. The company had recently closed an enormous acquisition deal that pushed profits well beyond anything previously projected. According to my executive compensation agreement, I was contractually entitled to collect a performance bonus valued at roughly $4 million, with the payment scheduled for the following afternoon. I had already begun mapping out investment strategies and thinking about how I could finally give my parents the retirement they deserved. Every benchmark outlined in my agreement had been surpassed. Every required document had been executed, and there was no legitimate contractual basis for withholding that payment. The afternoon before my bonus was set to be processed, my supervisor appeared at my office door and requested an immediate meeting. Upon entering the conference room, I found a human resources representative and a company attorney already seated beside him. The atmosphere carried a rehearsed, transactional chill. My supervisor kept his gaze directed away from mine as he slid a manila folder across the table and explained that organizational restructuring and shifting business priorities had necessitated my immediate termination. The decision, he assured me, was already final. I sat quietly for a moment and absorbed what was in front of me. Every individual in that room had mentally prepared for an outburst. They braced for fury, disbelief, or emotional collapse. Instead, I methodically read through every section, signed the acknowledgement form, thanked each of them for their time, and stood up. The rehearsed confidence on their faces slowly gave way to visible confusion. My composure had not been part of their script. Walking out of the building with a small box tucked under my arm, I caught a glimpse of my supervisor's satisfied expression. He was thoroughly convinced he had just protected the company from a multi-million-dollar obligation. What not a single person in that building understood was that several months earlier, during a careful personal review of my employment contract, I had uncovered something buried deep within the legal language. The clause was written in dense technical wording that made it easy to overlook during a quick scan, but its meaning was unmistakable once properly read. Should the company terminate my employment without documented evidence of misconduct within 30 days of a scheduled bonus payment, that bonus would become immediately due and enforceable, and additional financial penalties could be layered on top. I highlighted that paragraph, preserved copies of every relevant document, and kept thorough personal records. Something deep down had told me this knowledge might matter someday. Approximately 1 hour after I left the building, the legal department began processing the termination paperwork in preparation for making everything official. The attorney leading that review was widely regarded as one of the sharpest legal minds in the industry, someone with a reputation for identifying problems before they escalated. As she worked her way through the documentation, she reached the section containing the clause I had flagged months earlier. People present that day later described watching her expression shift noticeably as she reread the paragraph multiple times before slowly removing her glasses and raising her eyes toward the chief executive. The room fell completely silent before she spoke. "Brian, please tell me you paid her." The CEO initially responded with a laugh, apparently interpreting her tone as theatrical. Then she walked him through precisely what the contract stipulated. The termination had not erased the $4 million obligation. It had instead activated a series of accelerated compensation provisions, mandatory legal reimbursement requirements, and penalty structures that threatened to cost the organisation several multiples of what the original payment would have required. The confidence that had filled that room hours earlier vanished entirely. Over the days that followed, senior leadership scrambled frantically to understand how such an oversight had occurred. Internal communications were audited, managers were called in for questioning, and emergency sessions consumed the calendar. What investigators uncovered only deepened the legal exposure. Multiple internal emails surfaced containing explicit discussions about timing my termination to avoid triggering the bonus payment. Those communications transformed what the company had characterized as a standard personnel decision into a documented, intentional breach of contract. My phone began ringing constantly. Executives who had barely acknowledged my existence in recent years suddenly needed conversations. Human resources sent urgent messages. Outside counsel retained by the company reached out to my legal representatives requesting immediate discussions. The same individuals who had presumed they held every advantage were now scrambling to negotiate their way out of a trap constructed entirely by their own decisions. The matter concluded through a confidential settlement that exceeded the original bonus by a meaningful margin. Beyond the financial resolution, several of the executives who had orchestrated the termination faced internal accountability. Some were removed from their roles, while others chose to resign before that outcome was forced upon them. The reputational damage that followed lingered within the organisation long after the settlement funds had been transferred. Reflecting on everything, the lesson I carry is straightforward. Arrogance convinces people that they are operating on a level above those around them. These executives believed they had identified a clever manoeuvre that would save the company millions while eliminating an expensive line item. Instead, they skipped the details, miscalculated the person they were dealing with, and built a catastrophe from their own overconfidence. The morning they escorted me out, they believed they were closing a chapter. What they were actually doing was handing me the opening page of something entirely different. By the time that attorney finished reading the contract, every consequential decision had already been made. The people who set out to take everything from me ended up surrendering far more than they ever intended to keep.